Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. There has been a lot of heated discussion in the comment section over the last couple of weeks talking about who has the most talented roster in the country heading into 2024, and a team that we don't talk nearly enough about as arguably having the most talented team on paper heading into 2024 is the Ohio State Buckeyes. We're going to go position group by position group, stacking where Ohio State ranks nationally heading into 2024. Extremely excited to get into this one. A loaded roster with a ton of talent at a lot of different position groups. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. It has been a blast of an offseason, talking the recruiting trail, doing position deep dives. The amount of support you guys have shown the boys truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And much more importantly, would love to hear some of your feedback in the comment section, whether you agree, whether you disagree. Would love to hear it. We'll chop it up there. And without further ado, let's get into this one now. Many of you guys know I am a massive Michigan fan, but I do have to give credit where it's due. This Ohio State team heading into 2024, what they've done in the transfer portal, what they've done on the recruiting trail the last couple of years, this is one of, if not the most talented team in the country. Let's start with the quarterback position now. From a pure depth standpoint, there is a very strong argument that this is the number one quarterback room in the country from a depth standpoint, right? For those who don't follow the recruiting trail, okay, you bring in Will Howard in the transfer portal. You have former five-star Devin Brown. You have five-star Julian Sain. You sprinkle in Aaron Nolan, Lincoln Kienholz. That is 5 blue-chip quarterbacks all in one quarterback room. From a depth standpoint, I don't know if I can name a quarterback room across the country that is as loaded as what Ohio State has heading into 2024. Now, from a starter standpoint, I would say Will Howard's comfortably a top 30, top 25 quarterback in the country. But more importantly, I'm more interested to see how he fits in this Chip Kelly offense, because that number could move up. If he really does fit in with what Chip Kelly wants to do on offense, I mean, Will Howard, you have some question marks in terms of how he can attack downfield on a consistent basis. Big body, very good athlete, can get involved in the run game. I think Will Howard and his success on the field for Ohio State is going to be really predicated on how Chip Kelly decides to use Will Howard. And I'll say this for Ohio State fans. I mean, having watched a lot of Chip Kelly the last 10 years, he's a coach that knows how to use a quarterback that can move around. And so I'm really excited to see how Will Howard fits into that system. Now, the good news for Ohio State fans, I might have slighted Will Howard a little bit. You might disagree with my evaluation on Will Howard. The wide receiver room, there's a strong argument that it's the number one wide receiver room in the country. I don't think there's much of an argument to say they're outside of the top 5, maybe even top 3. You start looking at this wide receiver room. Let's start with Emeka Egbuka, who I think is probably the most popular name from a casual college football fan perspective, a guy that was supposed to go in the first round of the NFL draft, probably would have been a top 100 pick if he had declared. He comes back. I don't even know if he's the number one wide receiver on this team heading into 2024. And that's not a shot at Emeka Egbuka. It's more of a compliment to some of the younger guys that are coming through Ohio State. The guy that I think might lead this program in catches, receiving yards is Carnell Tate. Going into his second year, I was a massive fan of Carnell Tate coming out of high school. I think there's a lot of buzz around what Carnell Tate can do. So you're looking at Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate. The next guy I'd put in there, and I think most people are familiar with him, especially if you follow the recruiting trail, is Jeremiah Smith. And again, as a Michigan fan, that is the one guy that I'm really not excited to see for the next 3 years. I mean, Jeremiah Smith, a generational guy coming from the state of Florida, that's probably your starting 3 rotation, right? Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith. But what's truly wild about this wide receiver room is that you sprinkle in a guy like Brandon Inniss, a former 5-star going into year 2. Mylan Graham, another 5-star coming in as a true freshman. That is a loaded wide receiver room that so many different ways that they can hurt you. And a lot of the wide receivers kind of excel at different things. There's a strong argument that this is the best wide receiver room in the country. I'll certainly slot them in as a top 3 wide receiver room heading into the 2024 year. You look at the running back room, and I think there's a very strong argument again that this is the number one running back room in the country. Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins coming in through the transfer portal. Travion Henderson, as a Michigan fan that I am, I don't forget what Travion Henderson looked like as a true freshman. I feel like a lot of college football fans are writing Travion Henderson off. This is a guy that we haven't really seen fully healthy since his true freshman year. A healthy Travion Henderson, I said this heading into 2023, I think could be the best running back in the country when fully healthy. This is a guy that can get involved in a lot of different ways. And then you enter in Quinshon Judkins, who I think comfortably is a top 10 running back in the country. And what I love most about both of these running backs is I think they balance each other out extremely well. And you look at how much Ohio State's probably going to run the football with Will Howard potentially being your starting quarterback. I think that keeping two guys fresh all year, two guys that are probably top 10 in their, for sure, top 10 in their position group, all in one running back room. This is going to be a rushing attack that is going to be extremely exciting for Ohio State. Now, the big question mark for Ohio State, and really, I think if this group emerges as one of the better units in the country, really puts Ohio State kind of right in the driver's seat of a national championship contention, is the offensive line. If there was one group that outside the quarterback room last year that I really didn't think was that elite for Ohio State, I know Ohio State fans certainly agree, it's the offensive line. You add a guy like Seth McLaughlin in at center, who there's going to be a lot of memes about Seth and the snaps that he missed at Alabama. When you evaluate Seth as just a center and you take out a few bad snaps at bad moments from Alabama, he's a very good center that has a ton of experience. I know Ryan Day and I know a lot of other people believe that the cadence of Jalen Milroe might have thrown Seth off a little bit in terms of the snapping. I'm not worried about the snapping. I have a hard time seeing him miss as many snaps as he did last year at Alabama. Seth McLaughlin, a very good addition. Josh Simmons coming in second year, solid. I'm most excited about a guy like Luke Montgomery. And I think if you're an Ohio State fan, you really want to see some development from some of these young guys. And Luke Montgomery is probably the guy that you're looking for to really emerge at that offensive line position. I don't think I'd put it as a top 25 group in the country heading into 2024. I think it certainly has the potential to be, but that's the main story for me for Ohio State heading into 2024. Let's just be frank about it. If you get very good offensive line play with the running back game that Ohio State has, you're looking at an offense that can hurt you in a lot of different ways. That Ohio State offensive line room is probably the biggest question mark kind of the key for, I think, Ohio State heading into 2024. Now, going to the defense, this is a defense that I think there's a lot of arguments is the best in the country. And I think they're probably top 5 at each position room on this defensive side of the football, starting with the defensive line. Now, when you're evaluating talent on the defensive side of the football, specifically on the defensive line, I care about who's starting, but I also really care about depth because you're rotating a lot of those guys in and out. Looking at the starters first, Jack Sawyer, JTT. Jack Sawyer was phenomenal. I think a lot of the hype going into 2023 was JTT, who played solid. I thought Jack Sawyer was the better edge rusher to end the year. You go back to some of the film late in 2023, Jack Sawyer was absolutely phenomenal. But then you sprinkle in guys like Caden Curry, like Kenyatta Jackson. You got true freshman Edric Houston. This is an edge group that I think goes 4 guys that are very, very good with 2 high-level NFL guys in JTT and Jack Sawyer. I'll take that edge room to be a top 10 group in the country pretty easily. Now, on the inside, again, I like some of the starters. I think the question mark is, what does the depth look like inside for the big dogs inside? Ty Hamilton, Tyleik Williams, 2 very good players. A guy like Hiro Kanu, I'm extremely excited about. I thought he played really well in the spring practice last year. I want to see more of him. I think he can be extremely disruptive. And a guy that's coming out of spring practice with a lot of buzz after reading some spring practice notes, Jason Moore. This guy's really big. He can be really disruptive. I think the inside of this defensive line, definitely top 20, top 15 in the country, potentially even top 10 if some of these guys kind of get some development on the inside. Going to the linebacker room, really like this group. Really like Sonny Styles moving to that linebacker spot. Cody Simon's been a stalwart. It's been very, very good. I think a lot of, again, I don't mean to use the word casual college football fans, but college football fans that might not be that in touch with the recruiting trail will write this Ohio State linebacker guy that in my mind can be one of the best linebackers in the country as going into year 3. You're moving him in from that safety spot. I think his body type is probably more set to play that linebacker spot. Really excited about him. Really excited about CJ Hicks going into year 3 as well. I would like to see more of them coming into this year. Top 10 group for sure. You go to the secondary room, and that's where I think there's an argument that this is the best secondary that you see in the country. And again, as a Michigan fan, y'all know I think this Michigan secondary is going to be very good. I think Oregon's secondary is going to be very good. Looking at this secondary room, let's look at the cornerbacks first, right? Davis and Ignos, who I thought played really, really good to transfer from Ole Miss. Denzel Burke on the other side, again, probably could have been a top 100 pick, maybe even top 50 pick in the NFL draft. Really set at the boundary cornerback spot. I think Jermaine Matthews is a guy that it's crazy to talk about Jermaine Matthews not even starting for this Ohio State team, because he's a guy that starts on probably 98% of other Power 5 programs. You look at the nickel role, Jordan Hancock, very good. Safety role, Caleb Downs, true freshman All-American, a guy that the buzz around Caleb Downs is not just really good safety. It's more of a difference maker safety, generational kind of safety. And then you put him right next to Lathan Ransom, who's played a ton of football for Ohio State. I mean, that's a cornerback or a secondary room that, again, I think you're talking about definitely top 3, potentially the best secondary in the country heading into 2024. You look at this Ohio State roster, I mean, pretty consistently across the board, top 5, top 10 at their position groups. And I think the question now is, can it come together? Can you marry Chip Kelly? Can Ryan Day get the most of this roster? Because to be frank, and again, as a Michigan fan, I'll be straight up, this is one of, if not the most talented team in all of college football. Now it's got to come together, get put on the field in the big moments on Saturday. Very excited to watch the spring game, to see some of the young guys coming in. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas again. It's been a blast this offseason doing these type of things. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comments section as well. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.